Hey guys, I wanted to send out a short video with a couple of tips on drafting fantasy football. I wanted to remind you the League Landry draft date is September the 4th, Sunday at 7 p.m. So if you go on your league page, right about an hour before the draft time, this will show something like enter draft room. So you can come in an hour or 30 minutes before and get there. If you want to practice your drafts, you can actually come to this part right here, click on this, and then go to mock draft lobby. And that's one place where you can enter a mock draft and practice if you want to do that. The other part of this video that I wanted to go over is I've been watching this guy named Nick Zylak. He has his own YouTube channel. He has a fantasy football website as well. So if you search Zylak in YouTube, it'll bring up his YouTube page. It'll look something like this. And he puts out videos almost every day on fantasy football tips. One of the more interesting things that I saw from him this summer was he did 7 years of research, 7 years of ESPN draft data, looking at over 770,000 teams. And he identified draft strategies of teams that made the playoffs at an above average rate in most seasons. So these strategies worked for most teams in most seasons. So you should consider drafting your running back 1 and your running back 2 in the first 3 rounds. Your third running back in rounds 4 or 5. A fourth running back in round 7 to 10. And a fifth running back in round 14 or later. Wide receivers, you should take your first wide receiver in rounds 3 to 5, your second in rounds 4 to 7, third in rounds 6 to 9, and your fourth and fifth wide receivers. These would be high potential candidates. These would be high-risk receivers that may break out at some point in the season, like rookies in rounds 10 or later. Your quarterback, you should choose a quarterback in rounds 6 through 10, no earlier. And it's optional to choose a second quarterback later on in the draft in rounds 9 through 12. So these are both effective options. Picking one here, and that'd be your only quarterback, or picking an additional second quarterback in these rounds. Similarly with tight ends, it's best to draft an elite tight end. You'll find those in rounds 2 to 4. These would be like Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, or George Kittle. Those are the 4 elite tight ends, and also Darren Waller. And consider drafting an additional tight end, your second one, in rounds 11 through 15. Now, if in a 10 or 12 team league, only 4 people or 5 people can have an elite tight end, so you're more than likely to miss out on an elite tight end. So in that case, what you should do is draft 2 tight ends. These would be non-elite tight ends, and wait until rounds 11 to 15 to draft those. You should always draft your kicker and defense in the last 2 rounds. Lastly, you should not force this roster build. So it's okay to draft players that are values. So for example, I have this draft board that I made up for Doogie's league that I'm joining. So for example, in the tips that I gave you, it says you should draft two running backs in the first 3 rounds. Well, let's look at this. So all of these in blue are running back. You see the little RB next to their names. So what if you're picking over here and all these people are drafting running backs. Well, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are predicted to be the two best wide receivers in the league. If you get them on your team, you have a real good chance of doing really well, especially in a PPR or a half PPR league. If you don't know what those are, look those up, or I can explain it to you later. So even though you will not be getting two running backs in your first 3 picks, the value that you get from picking these 2 elite wide receivers here may outweigh the disadvantage of not having 2 running backs in your first 3 picks. What this person would have to do at this point would be, in these next few picks, make sure they pick some running backs. But this is not a bad option if your favorite running backs are already taken, to choose wide receiver. So even though it violates this running back build suggestion, these players would be great values at those positions. So it's okay to take players who have fallen considerably below where they would normally go. Because normally Justin Jefferson is going to go around here and Jamar Chase is going to go around here. And so you're getting them in the first round at a value of like 5 or 6 or 7 places, which is really good. So that's that. My tips would be to try to use some expert rankings, not just go by what pops up on the screen on ESPN. One place that I go to that's free is called Fantasy Pros. So if you go to Fantasy Pros and you go to NFL Fantasy Pro Experts, it shows these guys right here. You can put in our league as a half PPR league, which means every reception counts for a half of a point. In a PPR league, every reception counts for a full point. And in a standard league, receptions don't count for any points. So anyway, I particularly like this guy, Pat Fitzmaurice. He's one of the best drafters or fantasy football players. So if you can click on him and see how he ranks these players, which is going to be more accurate than what you're going to get on ESPN, because ESPN is just a composite of what people who are drafting are picking. This guy does it for a living, and he bets, so he's going to be more accurate than the average family league member who's picking on ESPN. Same thing with all these. They're going to be more accurate than ESPN. So that's my suggestion. The other suggestion I have is to practice mock drafts. So I just showed you a place where you can go on ESPN and do a mock draft. Or if you want to go to Fantasy Pros, you can go to NFL mock drafts, and they have their own little site right here where you can practice as well. So those are my tips for improving your draft on League Landry Fantasy Football. If all you do is follow this advice right here and none of these things about ESPN or mock drafts, if you just follow this, you'll be much better off than if you were just going into it blind. But if you can do these 2 things, get expert rankings and practice a few mock drafts, you'll do a lot better. Again, the draft is Sunday, September the 4th at 7 p.m. If you don't show up for the draft, if y'all are busy, it will auto draft for you. So you will end up with a team, and it'll probably be a pretty decent team. So if you want to do that, that's fine. If you go on Eat Out or whatever, you don't have to come into the draft. But I think you should try to make an effort to do it, because it really is kind of fun. If you have any questions, you can text me or email me, and let me know if you have any questions or whatever. I hope we have a good year. Take care. Bye.